"You're slower than I expected," he said, casually picking at his salad. "I thought a PA would be more competent." Amara swallowed, her fork trembling slightly. I'm still learning," she said softly, unsure if she should fight back or retreat. He leaned back, studying her like one studies a painting in a gallery, calculating, cold, and mesmerizing. "Learning," he repeated, his tone carrying a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "We'll see how long that lasts." For the next few hours, the day seemed to stretch endlessly. Every interaction, no matter how brief, was like walking on a tightrope. She could sense his attention, even when he wasn't speaking to her, like a shadow following her across the office. And though she tried to focus on the work, she found herself glancing up far too often, just to catch sight of him. By the afternoon, Amara was exhausted. She had survived the first day, but just barely. She headed toward the elevators, thinking she could escape for a moment of reprieve, only to find him standing there, arms crossed, leaning casually against the wall. "Going home?" he asked. "Yes, I think I need a break," she replied, trying to sound confident. He tilted his head slightly, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "Be careful. Min Global is not a place where mistakes are forgiven lightly." Her stomach tightened. There it was again, the edge, the subtle threat buried under the calm surface. And yet, she felt drawn to him. Something about his intensity, his silent power, made her pulse race. As the elevator doors closed, she realized something alarming. She was thinking about him more than she wanted to admit. The same man who was, by all rights, trying to intimidate her, was already occupying her thoughts in ways that made her nervous, excited, and terrified, all at once. That evening, as she left the building, she didn't notice the black sedan parked across the street. Inside, Joon-ha watched her leave, expression unreadable. But his mind was racing. She's not like the others, he thought. She's something else. And for the first time in years, he felt the faint stirrings of doubt in his plan. Could he really destroy her when something about her made the idea unbearable? He didn't answer that question yet. He would wait, observe, test. And still, she had already broken through his perfectly constructed walls, without even knowing who he was. Outside, Amara sighed, rubbing her temples. The city lights reflected off her tired eyes. She didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning of a dangerous proximity. One that would pull them closer together, spark by spark, even as secrets and vengeance loomed in the shadows. And somewhere in the distance, Joon-ha's carefully controlled world began to tilt, ever so slightly, because the one person he had sworn to ruin was already infiltrating his heart. Amara's first week at Min Global felt like being dropped into a battlefield she didn't understand. Every corridor was a war zone, every task a landmine, and every moment around Joon-ha was a clash between fear, frustration, and a strange, unwanted pull toward him. The CEO seemed determined to make her life unbearable. Not difficult, not challenging, unbearable. It started with small things, then escalated to deliberate sabotage. "Miss Blake." Joon-ha's voice drifted from his office, low and cold. Inside, her heartbeat jumped. She stood quickly, smoothing her blouse as she walked in. On his desk were 12 thick folders. Yesterday there were 10. The day before that, 8. "These need to be summarized, digitalized, and reorganized," he said, not looking up from his tablet. Before 8 p.m., her mouth parted. "Yes, sir. It's already past 3. "Good. Then you'll work faster." His tone was emotionless, controlled, but his eyes, when he finally looked up at her, something flickered there. Heat, resentment, and something she could not name. Something that made her stomach tighten. Amara swallowed and nodded. "I'll get it done." She turned, but his voice followed her. "Don't disappoint me." She never did, but it never mattered. By Thursday, whispers floated through the office like smoke. "She's the new girl the CEO hates. He deliberately piles work on her. She won't last 2 weeks. She's the reason his father." Amara froze. That rumor again. That shadow she didn't understand. His father. Every time the topic came up, Joon-ha's eyes turned darker, harder. Every night she went home and cried silently into her pillow. Not because of the workload, not because of the whispers, but because she didn't know why she was being punished, why she was treated like a criminal, why this man, this impossible, magnetic, cold man, looked at her like she was the ghost of his nightmares. Yet something in her refused to break. She needed this job. She needed to clear her name. She needed to prove she wasn't the villain in whatever story he believed. Joon-ha watched her from his office window, a habit he despised but couldn't stop. She worked like she was fighting for her life. She never complained. She never quit. She never gave up. It made him furious, and fascinated, and confused. Every trait she displayed contradicted the file he had been given. The file that claimed she had betrayed the company years ago. The file that had contributed to his father's downfall. His father, the memory stabbed through him again. His father coughing in his hospital bed, whispering about betrayal, about a young woman who ruined everything. Joon-ha had promised revenge. He had sworn to finish what his father couldn't. So why did this woman make him hesitate? Why did she look so genuinely terrified and yet so brave? Why did the sight of her crying in the break room 2 days ago haunt him still? Why did he want to wipe her tears away with his own hands? He clenched his jaw, knuckles whitening. No, he couldn't feel this. Not for her. Not for the woman tied to his father's downfall. But feelings were traitors and his were no longer listening to him. Late one evening, while organizing old digital archives, she paused at the logo on an old file. Min Securities, subsidiary of Min Global Group. Her breath stilled. Her pulse spiked. She had worked for Min Securities years ago, until a mysterious system breach scandal had forced half the staff out. She had been one of them. She'd been innocent. But no one had believed her. Slowly, trembling, she searched for the staff list from that year. Her name was there. Her department. Her supervisor. She pressed a hand to her mouth. This company? This CEO? This man tormenting her? Was he connected to this company she had been accused of betraying? Were they partners? But however, it all made sense. The hostility, the traps, the hatred in his eyes, the rumors about his father. Pain knifed through her chest, sharp and suffocating. She whispered into the empty room. He thinks I did it. She sank to the floor, shoulders shaking. But when she finally stood again, her eyes were red, yet steady. I will prove my innocence, she vowed. I will not run. Not again. Meanwhile, across the building, Joon-ha sat alone in his father's old office. The lamp flickered softly. His father's picture sat on the desk. He whispered, Appa, I'm doing everything you asked. But the more he spoke, the more doubt crept in. His father had been a brilliant man, but in his last years he had been sick, confused, sometimes paranoid. A thought he had never dared entertain crept into his mind. What if the file was wrong? What if his father had been misled? What if she wasn't the enemy? He closed his eyes tightly. No, he muttered. She has to be guilty. She has to be. But the truth was already starting to unravel inside him. The first week under Joon-ha was hell. The second week was worse. Amara didn't know how she was still standing. Every morning, she walked into Min Global with a tight chest and trembling fingers, knowing that whatever she did, Joon-ha would find a flaw, demand more, or simply look at her with those cold, unreadable eyes that made her feel small. He buried her in work, redlined her reports, called her into his office at impossible hours, made her redo tasks she had already completed perfectly. But she swallowed her pride, blinked away tears, and kept going. She needed this job. She needed answers. She needed to clear her name from the past she still didn't understand. There were moments, tiny, fleeting moments, when she caught something in his eyes. Softness, curiosity, a flicker of longing he quickly strangled. The problem was, Joon-ha hated himself for that flicker. Every time he found himself watching her, how her eyebrows furrowed when she concentrated, how she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. He felt the sharp stab of betrayal against his father's memory. How dare he feel anything for her? The woman he believed destroyed everything. So he pushed harder. Not because she was incompetent, but because she was becoming impossible to ignore. And that terrified him. The week following the gala was nothing short of war. For Amara, it was survival. For Joon-ha, it was obsession disguised as punishment. Every morning, Amara arrived before dawn, but Joon-ha would already be there. Cold, emotionless, acting as if she were invisible except when assigning tasks nobody could possibly finish alone. He made her redo presentations 4 times. He sent her to meetings back-to-back without breaks. He gave her impossible deadlines, scheduled late-night tasks, and criticized the smallest mistakes. Sometimes he didn't speak for hours. Other times, he spoke only to cut her down. Not professionally, personally. You're not capable enough. You don't belong here. You can quit whenever you realize this is too much for you. Amara tried desperately not to let it break her. She hid in bathrooms to cry quickly, splashing water on her face before returning to her desk with her spine straight and voice steady. She needed this job. She needed answers. She needed to clear her name. And she refused to let him see her fold, even if he wanted her crushed. Yet every time she pushed through the pressure, every time she lifted her chin, every time she met his eyes with tears she refused to shed in front of him, something inside him cracked. He noticed everything he wasn't supposed to notice. The determined set of her mouth, the gentleness in her voice, the way she never raised her words back, the strength she carried even when exhausted, her kindness even to him, and it infuriated him. Why was she kind? Why didn't she break? Why did her presence shake him? He was supposed to destroy her, but at every turn, he found himself memorizing her instead. Sometimes he would stare too long, then snap at her to cover his slip. Sometimes his voice softened for half a second, then he'd harden it again. Once, he reached out as if to brush away a strand of hair near her cheek, and stopped himself so abruptly his hand curled into a fist. He hated himself for wanting her, and hated her more for making him feel anything at all. Whenever she went home, exhausted and trembling, she asked herself the same question. Why does my heart race around that man? He was cruel. He was harsh. He was cold. But sometimes, behind the anger in his eyes, she saw something else. Pain, loneliness, conflict, something deep and unresolved. And that scared her more than his cruelty, because she should not care for the suffering of a man who seemed determined to break her. But she did. Against reason, against self-protection, against everything she thought she knew. There was something between them, a pull neither of them could explain, a gravity both resisted but still fell toward. One late evening, while gathering old documents from the archives, Amara froze. A logo, a project name, a familiar file she had worked on years ago. Her breath caught. This is the same project from my former company. But why is it here? Is Min Global connected to my old job? Did they work together? Or is this actually the same company, under a different division? Pieces clicked. History repeated itself. Her past and this present were tangled together. But she still didn't know how. Not yet. Not the truth. Not the person behind the tragedy. But something inside her whispered, "You're getting closer." Later that night, while she waited for the elevator, she overheard 2 senior directors speaking quietly. It's been years since Chairman Min passed. Joon-ha still believes someone from the old project sabotaged him. Losing his father and the company collapse in the same year, it broke him. Amara froze. Chairman Min. The collapse. The project. Someone blamed. Her chest tightened painfully. Is that why he hates me? Does he think I hurt his family? But why? I didn't do anything. She covered her mouth, trembling. Everything suddenly made sense, except the biggest missing piece. Who told him she was responsible? And why? The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside, dizzy. Suddenly, the CEO wasn't just a cruel boss. He was a wounded man, a grieving son, A man misled by someone in the shadows. And she was caught in the crossfire of a lie she didn't even know existed. Meanwhile, inside his office, Joon-ha stared at the picture of his father on the wall. His jaw clenched. His eyes burned. "Appa, I'm doing everything you couldn't finish." He looked out the window deep in turmoil. But why does she make me hesitate? He swallowed hard, hating the answer. Because she feels like the truth. Because she feels like peace. Because she feels nothing like the monster he was told she was. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, "If I'm wrong about her, then everything I've built my anger on collapses." He was terrified, not of her, but of the possibility that he had been wrong all along. One night, 10:47 p.m., most of the building was dark, but Amara was still sitting at her desk, eyes burning, fingers stiff from typing. She had been reworking the same proposal for 7 hours straight. Her vision blurred. Her head spun. She didn't hear Joon-ha approaching until his shadow fell over her. "You're still here," he said, voice clipped. She swallowed. "You told me not to go home until the proposal was perfect." A muscle in his jaw twitched. He hadn't expected her to obey. He hadn't expected her to sacrifice sleep, food, or peace for his approval. "You could have sent it to me in the morning," he muttered. Her throat tightened. "You told me you wanted it before midnight." He froze. She sounded exhausted, fragile, but still determined. He hated how it made him feel. "Why are you trying so hard?" His voice dropped lower, harsher. "Most people would have quit by now." She looked up at him, tears shimmering but unshed. "Because I don't quit," she whispered. "Because I need this job, and because I have nothing to hide. I want to prove my innocence, whatever it takes." His breath caught. Innocence. The word hit him like a blow. For a moment, something cracked in him, something painful and buried. Before he could stop himself, the words slipped out. "Why this company? Why come here of all places?" She blinked. "Because this is the company I used to work for." His eyes snapped to hers. "What?" She swallowed again, voice trembling. "Min Global used to be Horizon Dynamics before the restructuring. I worked here 3 years ago, under the old chairman." The world tilted under his feet. His father's company, the company he rebuilt after the scandal, after the collapse, after everything was taken from them. He stared at her, breath uneven. She didn't look like someone lying. She looked heartbroken, haunted, confused, just as he had been. "You worked for my father," he said quietly, almost to himself. Her eyes widened. "Your father? The chairman? Was your father?" Silence. Sharp. Electric. Joon-ha felt his heart slam once in his chest and then freeze. All this time, all this revenge, all this hatred, and she hadn't even known who he was. She hadn't even known the company she returned to was tied to the tragedy. She was still in the dark, still blind, still broken, but still fighting. And for the first time, doubt slithered into his certainty. Joon-ha stood alone in his dim office. He opened the file that had haunted him for years, his father's final records before the scandal broke. The photos, the reports, the forged signatures, the betrayal he believed destroyed a man already weakened by illness. His father's last words echoed in his mind. "Someone inside. Someone we trusted. I didn't see it coming." For years, he had believed that person was Amara. But now, nothing made sense. If she was truly part of it, why would she walk back into the company voluntarily? Why would she fight so desperately to stay? Why would she break down in tears, yet still drag herself back to work the next morning? Why did she look more like a victim than a villain? His father's photo sat on the desk, the old man smiling faintly at the camera, unaware of the fate awaiting him. "I don't know anymore," Joon-ha whispered shakily. "I don't know if I'm hurting the wrong person." His chest tightened, painful, unfamiliar. And in that moment, Joon-ha realized 2 terrifying truths. 1. Amara might be innocent. 2. And he was already falling for her. Amara entered the office with swollen eyes, her heart heavy. But she didn't break. She moved with quiet determination, refusing to let exhaustion or cruelty defeat her. And when she passed Joon-ha's office, she didn't know he was watching her. Not with hatred, but with conflict, and something dangerously close to tenderness. Their worlds had just shifted. Their pasts were colliding, and the truth was no longer far away. This was the moment everything began to unravel. The office was colder than usual that morning. Not because of the air conditioning, but because CEO Joon-ha Min had arrived earlier than everyone, and that always meant one thing. He'd come prepared to make Amara's day unbearable. Amara's heels clicked softly against the premium marble, her breath unsteady as she clutched her tablet. The third week of working directly under him had taught her one painful truth. Joon-ha Min wanted her gone. Not dismissed, not transferred, gone. He had made it clear through impossible assignments, last-minute demands, and cold, calculated silences that stretched like glass about to shatter. Yet she stayed. She needed this job. She needed answers. And she needed to clear her name. "Miss Brooks." Joon-ha's voice sliced through the quiet as he stood with his back to her, staring out the glass wall toward the city skyline. "You're late." Her heart squeezed. She wasn't. She had arrived 10 minutes early. But arguing with him was pointless. "My apologies, sir," she said softly. "You apologize every morning," he replied, still not turning. "Yet nothing improves." She swallowed hard. "Sir, He turned sharply, and for one dangerous second, their eyes met. His were cold, sharp, searching, but underneath that icy hostility, something flickered, something that almost looked like pain. Amara quickly looked away before her heart betrayed her with a stutter. He walked toward her, slow and controlled. "I want the full archival reports reorganized, digitized, and cross-referenced before evening." Her breath hitched. "That's 3 years of full departmental data," she whispered. "And yet," he said, adjusting his cufflink, "I expect excellence." He brushed past her, close enough that she caught a faint, intoxicating scent of wood and winter citrus. Her body reacted. Her heart reacted. She hated that. She hated him for making her feel anything other than anger. But she did the work. Her hands trembled. Her back ached. Tears hid in her lashes. But she did not break. Late afternoon. Amara's vision blurred with exhaustion as she stacked the last of the archived files. Her fingers slipped, and an entire batch of documents scattered across the floor. She let out a small, strangled gasp. Her knees hit the carpet as she scrambled to pick them up, hands shaking from exhaustion, throat tight, tears finally slipping free. The door opened. Her body froze. Joon-ha stood there, rigid, expression unreadable, eyes locked on her small, trembling form on the floor. For a moment, he didn't say anything. His jaw tightened. His hands curled. He wasn't angry. He looked conflicted. "Get up," he said quietly. It wasn't harsh. It was almost restrained. But Amara forced herself to stand before he could see her tears properly. She wiped her face quickly, praying he didn't notice. "I finished everything you asked for," she whispered. He stared at her swollen eyes, at her shaking fingers, at the exhaustion in her shoulders. Something in him cracked, but he hid it. "Good," he said stiffly. "We're not done." Her heart dropped, but she nodded anyway, because she needed this job, because she needed the truth. As she gathered the things she'd sorted, something caught her eye, a file with the old name of a company she once worked at, Theracorp Holdings. Her breath stopped. The company she worked for before, the company involved in the scandal that destroyed her reputation, the company whose collapse nearly ruined her life. Another file from her past again, the company she worked for. She froze, staring down at the logo. Her lips parted in shock. It then occurred to her that this was the same company but rebuilt, and has to do with the way the CEO had been treating her. She turned quickly as Joon-ha took a step closer. His shadow fell across her. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. His voice was different this time. Lower, sharper, emotional. Amara swallowed. It fell from the archives. I didn't touch anything intentionally. Don't lie. Her stomach twisted. I'm not lying, she whispered. But he wasn't listening. His eyes were burning now, burning with a grief she didn't understand. My father, he said coldly, trusted the wrong people, trusted the wrong company. It killed him. Her breath faltered. She had never heard him mention his father. Ever. He spent years trying to rebuild what your people destroyed, Joon-ha said, voice trembling with controlled rage. And you expect me to believe you're innocent? Amara's heart cracked. She knew this pain was old, deep, the kind that twists a soul into knots and breeds lifelong hatred. Thank you for watching. Episode 2 ends here. Find out more about the story in episode 3 coming up soon. If you enjoyed the story, leave us a comment. Also share and subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new story is made.